Hi everyone, Sarah Pacaro here, your favorite transformational healer. Today we're going to be talking about the different types of boundaries, specifically 6 types of boundaries. When people come to work with me one-to-one and connect with me, they generally come from an emotionally abusive or unavailable upbringing. They've been in a series or string of toxic and narcissistic relationships, and they're at the point where they realize that they are the ones that need fixing, transforming, and changing, that they cannot and will not ever, no matter how much time, energy, and effort they put into it, fix, change, stop, or make anyone else be different than the way that they are. So when you get to that place and that realization that you need transformation, you need fixing, you need changing, you need healing, you need better boundaries. And that's generally what I hear when people come to me. They say, Sarah, I know that I need better boundaries, but they often just say that because it's a popular thing to say, but they don't even realize what it means, what it takes, and why it's so difficult to have that thing that they say that they want, because it sounds good to say, right? Of course, it sounds good to say, oh, I need better boundaries. Most people don't know what boundaries are, what the benefit of them are, and what's stopping them from having those boundaries. So we're going to get into that today in this video. So make sure that you stay until the end. So first of all, let's begin by defining boundaries. Boundaries are a way for us to honor our needs, to set realistic expectations. Most of us are out there trying to achieve and meet unrealistic expectations. That's due to childhood upbringing and trauma from the past. But boundaries are a way to set realistic expectations and to teach others how to treat us. And we're always doing that, regardless of whether you're slapping the label boundary on that or not. We're always teaching people how to treat us, but we're teaching others how to treat us in a healthy and respectful way. That is the benefit of having boundaries. But there's many, many types of boundaries, so they can be very confusing. What do I do in this situation? They can be situational, and then you may just throw the boundary out the window altogether, right? And when you do that, then you're throwing out your self-care, you're throwing out your self-respect, because boundaries are a form of self-care. They are a form of self-respect and self-love and self-worth. And that self-love, that self-care, that respect, and that worth allows us to protect us, to protect ourselves energetically, allows us to protect ourselves spiritually, physically, and emotionally. So we're going to get into the 6 different types of boundaries and why, specifically for people who come from an emotionally abusive or unavailable past relationships and upbringing, boundaries seem so difficult and so impossible. So remember to stay there, and I'm going to give you a special invitation to go deeper into healing the invisible wounds that are caused by not having these types of boundaries. So the first type of boundary is a physical boundary. A physical boundary is when you keep someone at a certain space or certain distance from coming into your physical space. You know that feeling that you get when someone gets too close to you, when they invade your physical boundary. They can even just be standing a couple of inches too close into your little bubble, and it starts to feel like, oof, get away. That's the sign that someone's invading your physical boundary. And maybe someone is seemingly nice, right? But they touch you or they brush up against you. Things that you can say when someone invades your physical space or boundary is, please don't touch me like that. I'm uncomfortable being this close. Could you please back up? You're a little too close for comfort. You could say things like, um, you know, I need a minute right now. I'll be right back. And then you can leave. You can physically remove yourself from that situation. And if you get uncomfortable, because most of the time when someone invades your physical boundary, you'll start to notice your breathing gets shallow, your hands get clammy, you start going, it becomes difficult to breathe. So when someone invades your physical boundaries, those are things that you can do, is to physically remove yourself. And what this does is this protects, again, your emotions, this protects your mental energy, and just gets you to a state where you feel safe. Just simply back up, right? You can take a step back. If someone says, if someone gets too close to you, you can take a step back, or you can say, oh, look at that. I've got to take this. So I'll talk to you later. Even if no one is calling you, you can use the technology and the devices that we're all connected to allow yourself to set a physical boundary, to remove yourself, or to create some space. Hey, oh, I've got to get this, just a minute. And kindly and politely excuse yourself and create some physical space and boundaries. So physical boundaries are one form of boundaries. They're a very important boundary to have. Many of us, especially who come from emotionally toxic, unavailable, abusive past had our physical boundaries run over. We had them disrespected. And so it becomes really uncomfortable to create a physical boundary, but it is up to you, it is up to the person who wants the boundary to implement it and make sure that it happens. And you can do this often without words. You can just simply back up. You can, use excuses to give yourself that physical boundary and protective space that you need. So another boundary that we're going to get into, and this is one where people really, really struggle. They have a very difficult time implementing and setting up this type of boundary. This is an emotional boundary. And this is due to the internal unconscious programming that was caused because of that toxic and abusive past and upbringing. Your emotions feel disheveled. You feel so confused by them. You don't even know what you feel, or you feel so disassociated and disconnected to what you feel that you don't even know if what you feel is real. So you can't trust your emotions. You become your own gaslighter. And I get into this in my free training, which I really, really encourage you to take advantage of. You get to learn about the gaslighter you, the part of you that stuffs and bottles up their emotions, the part of you that pretends that they don't feel their emotions, that they're not impacted by their emotions. That's what I call the F you. There's the P me. That's the part of you that has now these perfectionist tendencies or these procrastinator tendencies because of these emotions that come up that we want to avoid feeling because we did not like when we were forced to feel them in the past, or felt that when we felt them in the past, there was nothing that we could do to get out of or get away from them. So emotional boundaries are a type of boundary, but emotional boundaries are very, very difficult for people who still are walking around and carrying around those inner unhealed wounds from past traumatic events. So again, I highly encourage you to go take advantage of watching that free training and masterclass. I'll leave a link in it for it in the description below the video. But to get into what an emotional boundary is, an emotional boundary is not taking on other people's emotional burden when you don't have the capacity. And who has the capacity if you're still walking around with inner unhealed wounds from your abusive past? Nobody does. But the people pleaser in you, that's the other part of the P me, that the person who overgives and overshares and takes on and says yes because they're afraid to say no, because they're afraid of what will this person think of me, or they're afraid of that person being mad at them. And in the past, it was just so painful when other people were mad at you because all of that pain and anger got projected onto you, and you're still walking around with it internally, unconsciously, and it's still expressing itself today. So emotional boundaries are very important, but very difficult for people who have been in narcissistic or toxic relationships, whether it was parents or whether it's partners. But that's what an emotional boundary is, not engaging in triggering topics. But you more than likely feel like every topic can be triggering, right? How's the weather today can be triggering because it can feel like they're dismissing you and not really wanting to get to know the true, real, genuine, authentic you, not wanting to take on your problems or even hear about them anymore. And then you begin separating yourself from your feelings. But that's what they say, don't engage in triggering topics, separate yourself from your feelings. But that's part of the problem in the first place, part of that disassociation, that disconnection. And again, we go into this much deeper in my masterclass, but some of the examples of things that you can say to set emotional boundaries, especially when people are trying to engage in topics and conversation with you and take you to places that you're not ready to go yet, because you still have triggers or inner unhealed wounds from those places from the past. You can say something like, this is not something that I am ready to discuss right now, or this is not something that I'm comfortable talking about at this time. You can say, I really want to support you. I want to honor you and where you're at right now, but I've got so much on my plate. When you start to realize that this person is triggering you or trying to put things on your plate that you just don't have room to carry or to handle, you can tell someone, but this is often triggering as well, you're not being respectful to me right now, and so I'm not going to be engaging this conversation anymore. A lot of times, especially with people that I work with whose emotional abuse and trauma comes from their parents, and they still have conversations with parents, find themselves able to easily and freely say things like this. Now, this is not a conversation or topic that I'm going to talk to you about right now. If we can pick another topic, we can continue the conversation. If not, I'm going to have to go. That's an example of something you can say to set set an emotional boundary. You can say, I need some alone time right now because I'm feeling like I'm about to get really upset. So I need some time to myself right now. That's a way to set an emotional boundary, especially when you realize that internally you're getting triggered. It's going to maybe send you into having a panic attack or an anxiety attack, or send you into complete overwhelm and spiral and complete numbing out dissociation, whatever it is that your body goes through when your emotional boundaries are crossed. So you can also say things like, I don't have the capacity to talk about this right now. What else can we talk about? Or can we talk about this? And instead of leaving it open to them, you offering a suggestion, can we talk about this instead? And having something that feels like a safe thing for you to talk about, something that you're comfortable talking about as your go-to, instead of leaving it open to them, because that feels like it leaves you open to more emotional wounding and trauma. So those are examples of emotional boundaries. Again, when you're ready to deeply heal from this and get to the very core, the very root of this and all those emotional wounds that make it so difficult to set emotional boundaries, we go into that into my masterclass and even deeper into completely transforming and healing all of those into my Past Pain to Present Power program. So I invite you to that. But let's continue on to talking about the different types of boundaries. Communication boundaries, right? Communication feels very chaotic, feels very confusing, feels very frustrating when you come from an emotionally abusive background or past relationships. It feels difficult to feel safe to communicate because you wonder and you have the story playing in your head that if you truly communicate what you're feeling and what your needs are, the other person is not going to respect them. It's not going to give a flying what about what you want, about your communication style. So communication boundaries by definition is how someone is allowed to speak to you. But again, when you come from an abusive past, other people have been allowed to speak to you, not as if you are another person and human of value or of worth. They've yelled at you, they've berated you, they belittled you, they have cut you down with their words, they have sliced you open with their words, and words are a form of communication, right? So communication boundaries can, again, be really hard to implement and establish when you've been hurt by words in the past, because we do communicate with our words. So when you're telling someone you're not allowed to talk to me like that, this is how you are allowed to talk to me, that may trigger them, which may trigger you, and it becomes this ping pong game of being triggered. So a communication boundary is what someone can and cannot say to you, and how you speak to yourself and how you speak to others. So see how it gets big, it gets complex. It can feel overwhelming to say, well, how in the world am I supposed to have communication boundaries? So some examples of things that you can say to set communication boundaries with other people. Again, this is way more easily said than done. It's way more easily done than said. A, when you've had practice, but B, when you've really done the inner work to heal those core wounds that were caused by these communication boundaries being overstepped and abused in the past. So that's everything that we get into inside the program. This video is not for that. It's just to maybe help you, give you some taglines or phrases to say when someone is overstepping your boundaries in communication and you're trying to protect and strengthen them. One of the things that you can say when you're setting and establishing a communication boundary is, if you demean me or call me names, this conversation will end. And again, this can be with anyone that you are dealing with that is overstepping your communication boundaries and making you feel belittled. Again, more than likely, you're going to be triggered at that point, finding it very difficult to say these things. And that's where healing from within those inner core wounds tremendously and completely changes the ease in which you can say these things. You can also say, I appreciate you sharing your input, sharing your insight, insight, not insight, sharing your insight and things that worked out for you. But I'm going to choose to go a different way. You can say, I'm not ready to talk about this. I would like to keep this private. I'm still working through this. You can say things like, please do not speak to me in that tone. But again, all those things may trigger that person, which if they're triggered, they're going to trigger you. So you can say things like, please stop telling me that I'm XYZ, this and that, that I'm too sensitive, that I'm hypersensitive. Please stop telling me that I'm overreacting. It doesn't help the situation and it feels dismissive. But again, Truly feeling worthy of standing up for yourself takes healing those inner core wounds. Without doing that, it's going to feel impossible to establish these communication boundaries and say the things that you need to do in order to put them in place. But communication boundaries are another form of boundaries, a very, very important one. And then there's mental boundaries. So there's mental and emotional boundaries. A mental boundary is allowing yourself to have personal thoughts, right? We all talk to ourselves more than we talk to other people. It's like there's a roommate inside of our head, and we're having a conversation and a constant dialogue with that person inside our head, allowing ourselves to have personal thoughts and beliefs and opinions that differ from other people. And being okay with other people not agreeing with you, because no one's going to agree with you 100% of the time. But the P me and the gaslighter me is really impacted by this, by allowing yourself to have thoughts and not attaching to those thoughts, specifically the self-harming, self-detrimental, the negative and limiting thoughts and beliefs. So allowing yourself to have those thoughts without connecting to them, without attaching to them, without identifying with them and saying that that is who you are. So again, so many people who've come from an emotionally unavailable and abusive past and upbringing, they agree with the negative things that other people say about them. And therefore, they break their own mental boundaries and barriers. So someone says something negative about them, like, who do you think you are? I wouldn't do that. I would do this. And you think, God, who do I think I am? I don't know. How dare me think that I shouldn't want this for myself, that I shouldn't go after that for myself, even though it will help me, it will move me towards healing, and it will improve my quality of life. So, mental boundaries, allowing yourself to have personal thoughts and beliefs and opinions that differ from others. The emotional abuser in your life, the narcissist in your life, wants you to think that you are not what you really are. They want you to think that you are what they say you are, that you're unworthy, that you're undeserving, that you're incapable, that you're worthless. They want you to think that. And it's okay to have personal thoughts and opinions that differ from other people. But when you've been abused and you've been gaslit, you begin to gaslight yourself. So it feels really, really difficult to break out of that. Again, going through the transformational experience that the program Past Pain to Present Power provides you freedom from that and allows you to establish healthy mental boundaries with yourself and with others. So things that you can say to begin that journey and that process when you're establishing mental boundaries is, it's okay if you don't agree with me. You can say that to the person who's stepping over your mental boundary. It's okay if you don't agree with me. I respect your thoughts. I respect your opinion. I respect your perspective, even if I don't agree with it. And I'm going to ask you to do the same for me. You can say things like, I hear you. And it's okay that we agree to disagree. I don't need to agree with you on everything. And this is one thing that I don't. And that's okay. It's okay for us to have different opinions and thoughts. You can say something like, you can't convince me that your opinion is the correct one, just like I can't convince you that my opinion is the correct one or the right one. And you can say, it's okay if we don't see eye to eye or if we don't agree, but you still need to treat me with respect, and I will do the same for you. So those are things that you can say, phrases that you can use when you're establishing mental boundaries. But again, when you've come from such a chaotic and emotionally abusive past, it feels almost impossible to establish those firm mental boundaries and not let someone cross them without a consequence. So again, I invite you to our program to dive deep into healing those inner core wounds. Another boundary we're going to get into is the boundary of time. Many people who have come from abusive past narcissistic relationships, they have given so much time trying to fix, trying to heal, trying to help someone else. They've neglected the time that they need to take to care for themselves. So boundaries of time feel like, well, no, I can't cut them off. I can't say, oh, I need to go. I need to be there for them. I need to help. I need to give more and more and more of my time. And abusers take advantage of other people's time, right? Because they don't want to spend that time really focusing on being with themselves. Most narcissists, most people who are takers, who are abusers, they take time from other people. You can get everything else in life back, but time is the one thing that you cannot get back. So Understanding time boundaries and implementing them in a way protects your sacred space, your energy, your time. So it's not being bombarded and infiltrated by the toxicity and negativity of others. So a time boundary is how much time you choose to spend with others, whether they're people that you like and love, or whether they're people that you can't really stand to be around. So how others should respect your time, right? If someone's late, if someone doesn't show up on time, what do you do? Do you just say, oh, it's okay, no worries, it's not a problem? Or do you do something about it, right? That's a time boundary. And again, all of this comes down to self-worth, to self-respect, how much time you spend on a certain task. When you get into the me archetype, the procrastinator and the perfectionist, this shows up big time, right? The me, the perfectionist, will spend way too much time on simple, small, easy tasks. That's a hard word to say because they want it to be perfect, because that outcome is connected to and tied to their identity and their self-worth and how others perceive and view them. So how much time are you spending on a certain task? Are you avoiding it altogether? Because if you complete it and actually put it out there, then are you putting yourself out there to criticism and judgment, right? And you don't want that. So you don't ever actually complete the task. You don't give it any of your time. So time boundaries are very important as well. When it comes to relationships and choosing how much time you spend with others, whether they're people that you like or love, or people who are disrespecting your time, or people that you really can't stand altogether, there are certain things that you can say to implement your time boundaries. You can say, please let me know in advance if you're going to be late. For example, in my business, I have a time boundary. I say, if you need to reschedule, then it must be done within 24 hours, or else this, and this will happen. That's an example of a time boundary. And that's because I respect myself and my clients and the time that I give to being with them, so that I can help and share as many people as possible. Part of the reason for the program as well. And it helps you establish your own time boundaries, because that's connected to your self-worth. So another example of a time boundary is, say that you have a friend who always calls you and you love this dear friend and you know that they're going through a lot and they really need someone to talk to, and you're really close, you've known each other for a long time, but you're super busy. And every time they call, it's like a 2-hour conversation, and you're trying to make dinner for your family, you're trying to get the kids to bed, and you also want to be there for them. An example of a time boundary in that case is to tell them, I can talk, but only for 15 minutes, and then I'm going to have to go. And if they say, okay, great. And then in 13 minutes into the conversation, say, hey, I realize you've still got more to share, but I've only got 2 minutes left and then I've got to go. So what would be another time that we can continue this conversation, so that you can end it on time, and that positively impacts the rest of your day? You can go spend time with your family, go take care of the kids without this person interrupting and invading the rest of your evening and then into the next day, because you didn't get all those things completed, making more work for yourself the next day. You can say something like, I'm available to help you, but it's only going to be for 1 hour. Is that going to be enough? And if that person says yes, and again at the hour, letting them know, I've given you an hour of my time. That's all I have to give. I do need to go now. And if they don't respect that, it's really a sign and indication that they don't respect themselves and they're not respecting what you did give them. And an opportunity to ask yourself if you really want to continue to give that person more of your time, that person who doesn't respect it and is abusing it, essentially. So say you get an invitation to something and you're the type of person that has a really difficult time saying no to things because you feel bad, you feel guilty, right? A common phrase of people who come from an emotionally abusive past is they feel bad, they feel guilty, and they feel burdened. They want to do everything for everyone. Say you get invited to something and you already have plans. You can say something like, thank you for the invitation. I really am glad that you invited me, but I'm not able to make it tonight. Let's see about getting together another time, and honoring and respecting your time instead of saying yes and then not showing up at all because you can't, or saying yes and then canceling last minute. Those are all ways that we disrespect ourselves and don't honor ourselves in our time, but things that you can say to help implement and establish that time boundary. And then, of course, all of this is relational. So relationship boundaries come into place as well. Relationship boundaries are how people can treat us, how they can behave around us, and what they can expect from us so that their expectations are met. So much pain is caused by unmet and unrealistic expectations, specifically when it comes to relationships. And when you've been in narcissistic, toxic, emotionally abusive relationships, all of those boundaries were non-existent, most likely, or completely crossed and disrespected. So when we're teaching people how to treat us, how we are going to allow people to behave around us and what they can expect from us, we want to speak from a place of what we can do, not what we can't do, right? Because talking about what we can't do doesn't make us feel good. It makes us feel incapable, that we're not good enough, that we need more of these things outside of us for us to feel whole, complete, and lovable. So we want to talk about what we can do and set realistic expectations. So when it comes to relationship boundaries and teaching people how to treat you, things that you can say are, I would appreciate if we can talk about this. Is tonight at 5 okay? Does that work for you? I would appreciate if we could talk about this instead of leaving this open and unresolved and undiscussed, because that is just going to build up resentment between us. I don't want that. So can we talk about this then? That's a way to set a realistic expectation that you want to have a conversation, and maybe going further than that. Can we talk for an hour at 5, right? Especially if you're incorporating the time boundary. Can we talk for an hour at 5 tonight? Because I don't want any resentment between us. And I'm already starting to feel that. So I want an opportunity to resolve that. That's a way that you can establish a relationship boundary. The expectation is clear. What time you want to talk, maybe what the situation is that you want to talk about and how long you want to talk for, so that that person can understand, okay, this is what they want to talk about. So I'm not going to be slapped across the face with like something I'm not prepared for. And they want to talk for an hour. And this is the reason why. Why? Because they really care about me. They want to get this to a good place between us. A relationship boundary, you can say things like, it would be really cool if I could, but I can't read your mind, just like you can't read mine. And I really want to know what your expectations are so that I know what yours are and I can share mine. That is truly going to transform any relationship. Because first of all, if you throw a little humor in there, they're going to go, yeah, you can't read my mind, because if you could, then you would know that I ha ha ha, right? So letting them know I can't read your mind. That's one of the things that we get into inside the program as well, is the mind reading. It's a distorted thinking pattern that people get stuck and caught in that can really impact your thinking and your relationship. So it's important to have relationship boundaries, kind of have a little fun and a little humor with it, especially if it's a relationship that you care about and that you want to be thriving and happy and healthy. Say that you have a friend or someone who you feel like is always talking behind your back. You share open and personal things with them, and then you find out that they are telling other people about it. And that's a relationship that is important to you, but it's starting to become impacted in a negative way, right? In a toxic way. So maybe a relationship boundary in that case looks like, look, I know that you're talking about my private matters and things I've shared with you with other people. Can you please respect my privacy by not sharing this with anyone else? And of course, if you find out that they do, following up with a consequence for that. And if I find out that you do, I'm not going to be able to share things with you anymore. And our friendship means a lot to me. So can you please not do that? Or else I'm just not going to tell you things anymore. And that would really hurt, because I really care about you and I like our friendship. So those are different ways that you can set relationship boundaries. Again, you always want to be clear, concise. You want to let them know what the consequence is going to be, because otherwise people go, yeah, okay, anyways. And all of these things are so much easier to do. These phrases are so much easier to use when you've healed those inner unhealed wounds, when you're no longer carrying around that emotional baggage from your past traumatic relationships or from your upbringing that causes you to question and gaslight yourself, that causes you to stuff and bottle your feelings, that causes you to be fake and wear a smile and pretend that everything's a-okay when it's really not. And that's what so many people do. Or they procrastinate, or they have to be perfect on things, or they're just a superhero of their own lives and they don't need anyone, right? But then they really feel so isolated and alone and on an island all in the middle of nowhere, all by themselves. So first of all, healing those inner unhealed wounds allow you to use these words and these phrases to set these types of boundaries with everyone in your life. The relationship boundaries, the time boundaries, the mental boundaries, the communication boundaries, the emotional boundaries, and the physical boundaries are all so much easier done when you've done the work to heal and transform yourself and that inner programming and that heavy, nasty, detrimental inner dialogue that seems to get the best of you. And in so many ways. So I would love to guide you on that journey. When you're ready for it, you can find out more information by clicking on the link in the description below this video about the Past Pain to Present Power program. And if you are interested in working one-to-one for your powerful transformation, you can find information to do that below as well. All right, guys, hope you found this video on boundaries helpful and encouraging to you wherever you're at in your journey. And I look forward to connecting with you again very soon. Bye for now.